using a timer. So I want to start with you, Bill, because you're newer to the race. We did do a conversation with the candidates during the Democratic primary, so we've heard a little bit from Josh on some issues. But since you weren't part of that, first I want to clarify help us understand why you're running as an unenrolled candidate. As I understand, it may have been because you missed the deadline to switch, but tell us, do you consider yourself a Democrat? Would you caucus as a Democrat? Should voters be concerned that as an independent, maybe you wouldn't have the kind of clout you might have as a Democrat on Beacon Hill?
Thanks for the question, Greg, and thanks again for hosting this today, and thanks for all watching and whoever might watch online. I believe I have democratic values I think at Beacon Hill, though, I will have an independent voice. And I think no matter what, when you go to Beacon Hill as a freshman legislature, you're not going to have that much power. But I think I have a lot in my background of coalition building, working within the town for groups to come together, that I would work very closely with the legislature when I get there. Just to back up a little though, so Denise announced she was not running on February 12th, which happens to be my birthday. So I don't know whether that was a sign or not. And then I just didn't hear many people stepping up to run for the position. And I thought, that this is a very important position for the towns that are represented in this district. And I didn't hear anyone stepping up at all. So I thought, like, I am well qualified this. I am a communitarian. I've worked very hard throughout the town of Needham. I have managed offices at Needham, Dover, and Medfield, so I know all the communities. I've worked very closely with Denise on Beacon Hill, and I've also worked in Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., so I thought I would be a good candidate for the position. So I met with Denise, we're talking, she goes, yes, you'd be a good candidate. We started talking about what you had to do, get signatures and things like that. And then all of a sudden, a light bulb went off over her head that, you had to be a Democrat by a certain date or a Republican, either party you wanted to run in. You had to be February 27th. We were meeting March 3rd. So I thought, what's the best avenue to take? Should I try a write-in candidacy as a Democrat? But I thought that would be hard to do if there are candidates on the ballot. And then I found out you can run as unenrolled. So I got the signature to decide to take that path. The reason I am unenrolled is at 64% of the district is actually unenrolled, and I'm unenrolled because in the primary, I want to be able to pick which ballot I'm going to vote on, because I want to vote for the best candidate and not sometimes those candidates are in different parties. Like I voted and was a big supporter of Charlie Baker.
So just to clarify, so you consider yourself a Democrat, or you consider yourself really an independent?
I would say I consider myself with democratic values, but independent voice. So I would say, I'm fiscally conservative, but socially liberal. I support pro-choice. I support LGBTQ+. So I would say I have some democratic values. But right now, as I continue on this race, I would say I'm still in the middle. I'm not, I'm still in the middle.
Right. And Josh, just to clarify, you've been a Democrat your whole life, or have you switched
Yeah.
out? Or, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Democrat from the time I could vote until today, and I will be on the ballot as a Democrat.
Okay, great. So Bill, I'm looking at your website and knowing how your campaign's going. A big selling point for you has been that you're this local guy, grew up, born and bred in Needham. You have a long history of kind of civic activities with the town, youth sports, an active super volunteer, the Exchange Club, town meeting, Memorial Park, 4th of July event. I mean, people know you from your generally broad civic information. Josh, on the other hand, you've been here how long?
3 to 4 years.
Okay, so you moved into Needham just 3 or 4 years ago, and you're a Green Beret, a teacher, a school principal, an attorney, right? So, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you both to kind of reflect on what that means. Whether being born and bred, I guess, is really a qualification or important to being on Beacon Hill. And I'll start with you, Josh. You think that matters?
Well, I think my experience over the years is going to help the district. I mean, I've worked in leadership positions, both, leading classrooms, leading schools, and working with high-level officials in a military capacity, both deployed and while stateside. You learn a lot in those experiences as to what leadership means. And, I've seen how generals guide, I've seen how colonels guide. I work with superintendents all the time. I think that sort of experience and seeing leaders lead and being with them, helping make decisions, would benefit these communities. So do I think that I need to be, here for my entire life to lead this district effectively? I don't. I think that this outside perspective is actually going to benefit the folks here. And I've worked with folks from all across the spectrum, both political, different beliefs. As a school-based principal, I see folks who have all sorts of beliefs, everything that you can think of on the spectrum of how to do business one way or another. I work with them and I build and collaborate with them to help support them, to help lead them to bring out their potentials in the idea of a student, or to bring the school to, improve its scores, to improve its capabilities to support students. In the National Guard as an attorney currently, I help commanders, currently a colonel, and his staff and soldiers understand rules and regulations so that they can make good decisions. So this is something I think this experience would actually help out a great deal. And I think it's a benefit. And I have met a ton of local people here. I have knocked so many doors. And I know how to make friends as a school-based principal, and in all my various roles throughout all the years, relationships is the key underlying factor. I can't do the jobs that I would do without being able to have healthy, effective relationships. And even though I haven't met everyone local, I have started to. A lot of them, I have a lot of support locally. And I expect that to grow and continue as people get to know me more and more.
Yeah. So Bill, help me understand this. I think you'll agree that Josh's resume is pretty impressive and a lot of very different experience. Your experience has been much more locally rooted, and you've been a real true civic do-gooder in Needham. But help us understand why voters should think that your local connection is a selling point for you, as it is prominently displayed on your website.
Well, thank you, Greg. And first, I'd like to thank Josh for his service. I know his background, and I'd like to thank you for your service. But it's not just, a lot of people have grown up in this community and are in this community, but I just didn't grow up here. I feel like I am part of the community. Everything I do is for the community. And I think you want someone on Beacon Hill who knows what the community needs. And we're going to kind of focus on Needham today because, of course, this is the main focus of the chamber. Although I've talked to people in Medfield and I have talked to people at Dover as well about their needs, but we really need to know what the needs of the community is, because your state legislator is your connection with your local community. So I've talked to the select board, I've worked with the select board, I've worked with the finance committee, I've worked with the police, I've worked with the fire, I've worked with Park and Rec. I've worked on a lot of projects within the town. Some of them need town funding, and I've worked very closely with Denise when we need things like that. I've already reached out to the stakeholders in the other towns. I met with the school superintendents. I met with 2 out of 3. I've met with the select boards in the other towns, and I've actually met with a planning board member from Dover, and it was a great conversation because Dover, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly, but they don't really have a downtown where, during this race, we go meet with a lot of people, both of us, and there's no place really in Dover to go have a cup of coffee and meet with them besides the Dunkin' Donuts. So they would like to revitalize and help do some things with the town. The planning board member was telling me this. And when they do something like that, they're going to need state funding to help them with that. So I think being aware of that and knowing what's happening will help me in the position and help them with the help they need. So it's not just having grown up here, but it's being part of the town, being part of the community, helping what the community needs to get done.
Right. And if I'm a resident who hasn't lived in Needham my whole life, should they care whether you lived here in Needham your whole life? I mean, is that?
I'm not saying that I lived here my whole life. It's my involvement in the town the whole life, because again, there's a lot of people that have lived in town the whole life, but they haven't been involved as I have been involved with the community.
Okay, one more
Can I make a point real quick though? Like
Yeah,
some
sure.
of the things I've done also support locally, even though I'm not doing them locally. As in like deployments, like when the war broke out, like someone had to go overseas to make sure that this country, would be safe, right? Someone had to volunteer for that. It wasn't a draft season. So I just want to make it clear, like, even though I haven't lived here forever, I have been supporting both national interests, which I think actually filter down locally to make a difference in these communities. Because I went overseas and helped fight in our nation's wars, I think other people didn't have to. And I do think that's locally supporting local communities. And one other point I'd like to make is that I also feel a part of this community. I live here. I've got kids in the school system. I care about this community. I would not be doing this if that were not the case. And I've continued to support, our neighbors, both trying to help kids in schools. In the National Guard sense, when COVID first broke out, I volunteered to go, one of the first people on the ground at the Holyoke Soldiers Home. And that was to help out groups that were in need. And I also think some of the things we did there benefited Needham, Dover, and Medfield, even though I wasn't locally based. So I just want to be clear, like, I have done stuff that maybe, while not in town, has positively affected town. And I think a lot of the things, when I meet with local leaders, I can learn. And when I learn them, I think I'll be an effective leader at enacting change and understand the kind of change they want to enact.
Right. Okay. So let me ask you both about the job you do want. And I've got to say, you both are vying to work in a place that's pretty dysfunctional at this moment, right? Beacon Hill has a poll came out, 47% of voters disapprove of the job Beacon Hill is doing. Only 42%, 47, less than 40% approve of what's happening on Beacon Hill. We know about all the bills that didn't get out of the House and Senate compromise committees this year. There's definitely a sense that freshman lawmakers, in fact, most rank and file lawmakers, have very little authority on Beacon Hill and chance to do it. It's all about the leadership. So you're probably both running for a reason besides the $70,000 salary that comes with it as a starting freshman. So what makes you think that you can make a difference? Why do you believe you can make a difference in Beacon Hill? Why do you want to do this, Bill?
Well, I would say, I do have experience going up to Beacon Hill. As a realtor, I am what's known as a state political coordinator with Denise Garlick. So I go to her and talk about different bills that will affect private property rights. So I'm used to working with her and other people on the Hill with the legislative process and how to get things done.
Yeah, but
Now,
why do you want to do it? Why do you
Well,
want to be there instead of the guy that visits there?
Because I think you're more effective if you're there than when you're the guy lobbying them. And I really feel that I am such a consensus builder. I've worked with, in our town of Needham, the Select Board and Finance Committee do not always see eye to eye. I've tried to work with them to, come together with consensus when there's difficult situations about what's going to happen and what's going to be done. And it is going to be hard as a new freshman legislator. You're kidding yourself, no matter what party you are in, if you think you can go up there and really make a change. But I think I can work with those people, listen to those people, try and get them to see what the communities need, because everyone who serves at Beacon Hill is really serving the constituents of their district and the constituents of Massachusetts. And one of the things that I know you just wrote about in your most recent newsletter, this is very disappointing, is the economic development bill that did not get passed. If I get up there and that's still not passed, one of my first things is going to be, let's get together. Let's get the two, the House and the Senate together so we can come up with something that can get passed. So we aren't slowing down economic development within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
So
And
I'm
that
just
to
going to
me,
say though, Bill, I've talked to dozens of legislators in our districts and elsewhere, and they all say they want to get the bill passed, but that doesn't get it passed. So I
think the more voices though that talk about getting it passed, the more chance it is to get passed,
Okay.
And the energy bill, there's an energy bill up there still too, I would just try and go around and talk to people and listen to people and say how it hasn't got passed. Why hasn't it got passed? What can we do to get it passed? I think you
Okay,
learn a lot by listening.
Josh Tarsky, what makes you think you can make a difference?
I've been in those circles with leaders, and I think I understand what their decision-making processes are. And I think that, when I first won the primary, Mariano sent out an invite to all the people who won the primaries for anyone who had a contested general election. I met his team. I met all the other reps who were in a similar situation. I think there were 22 of us. And I've already started building those relationships. So, this would be a continuous process. And for why I want to make this or why I want to do this job,
Yep.
which, there is a high cost for me. I would have to stop being a principal and give up what has been my livelihood for over a decade. The salary would be less. I would stop contributing to my pension. And I would stop with, having so many interactions with school-based students, which I enjoy, including my faculty. Like, this is something I love. But I think it's important. And like all the other times in my life where I see a need for someone to step up, I've tried to be that person, whether it's with war and joining the military or joining the fight to make education better. That's just, I'm a public service oriented person. And this to me is an extension. And the main reason I want to do this is because I think I can extend my influence, take all the things I've learned throughout my life and apply it to the State House for a better, Needham, Dover, Medfield, a better Commonwealth, and hopefully a better country.
Okay.
Increasing the amount of influence.
Great, thank you. And Bill, just quickly, so Josh just said he's going to give up his day job. What about you?
I will continue with my current position. Luckily, I have a great staff here at Berkshire Hathaway, so I will be able to do both positions. My wife might not think I can, but she doesn't see me that often anyway because I'm out at most events that Denise is at as well. I know and luckily we're close to Beacon Hill. We haven't really talked about transportation much, but that is a little bit of an issue.
Wait, so I'm going to get into this question. I just want to clarify one thing. Denise Garlick has not endorsed you. Am I correct?
Actually, she just recently did endorse me. I was going to mention that today. She has endorsed me.
Okay, that one's news to me, and looks like it might be news to Josh too. I know. So let's get into some issues. Starting with childcare. Childcare is a crisis level in Massachusetts. Needham, we just saw an organized effort to stop the development of a childcare facility. Literally stop building it. It's keeping our folks from, parents from getting the jobs they want. It creates all kinds of crises that can be more expensive than your housing costs in many places. So start with you, Josh Tarsky. What can we do to make sure working parents have affordable and enriching options for their children?
So, there was a bill passed where, there was assistance given to give 4-year-olds basically childcare assistance to families, right? The issue is that it only applies to gateway cities. So I think what we need to do is actually expand some of these offerings, not just to the select few cities, but make it universal across the state. Needham, Medfield, and Dover pay taxes as well. We should get some of the benefits of our tax dollars. So I would look to extend that, okay, and allow some of the benefits and that money that's at the state level to filter through here, especially because we gave to these funds. Hopefully we can get a piece of them and benefit the citizens here.
Great, thanks. Bill, what do you think? What do we do?
I would completely agree with that, but I just back up a little. When my children, full day kindergarten was such a big issue to get full day kindergarten, because never mind when they're infants, when they get a little older, to get full day kindergarten, we fought for that and got that. And that was I unfortunately, none of my children benefited from it, but I think that was an important thing to do. And I have a son, and he has how old is Liam now? 13 months old and expecting again. And they're struggling with, the daycare. Luckily, they have a home daycare right down the street that takes care of their child. But my wife and her mother also come in and help out because they are struggling with what to do. They're very lucky what they have that, but anything we could do that the legislature to get help for these young families and the daycare situation that in, and maybe even in the private sector, maybe we could help incentivize some of the private sector. If you actually have a daycare as part of your company, maybe there could be some incentives that we could give to them if that happens.
Okay, let's move to housing. And I want to start with you, Bill. I know I asked this question to Josh during the primary, but the MBTA Communities Law, the vote is coming up for Needham Town Meeting, October 21st. You're a town meeting member. Do you plan to vote for the more expanded neighborhood plan or the base compliance plan?
So I actually am a town meeting member from Precinct J, and I actually hosted a meeting at my house for town meeting members to discuss this actual article. And in Precinct J, I don't know how many people are familiar where Precinct J is. It's in the Heights. And so 100 West Street, the old Carter's building, is going to be most likely affected by this plan. So there was a lot of discussion about this plan. And right now I am leaning towards the more aggressive plan, but I want to make sure some of the questions are answered at town meeting, because I want to make sure there is still major site plan review from the planning board for projects like that. So that if the plan passes, the more aggressive plan, and they decide to do something at 100 West Street, the constituents, the neighborhood has to be able to have their input and have their say about what they think would be the best for that community. I think it could be fantastic if it is rebuilt, maybe with, homes or apartments on the second floor, some retail on the first floor, but you got to make sure then, about parking. You got to make sure right now, if you're coming down Highland Ave, they have a parking on the far side, which borders up against the neighborhood. I've heard plans that are talking that would all be green space. So that'd be great if that's green space, and put more of the entrance and the parking towards the West Street side. But again, then, we're going to have to make sure that we look at the traffic there on West Street. If they have, 200 units, how is that going to be handled?
Let me go to Josh. Josh, tell us how you're feeling about how you'd like to see town meeting vote on this issue.
Yeah, I support the neighborhood housing plan, the expanded version. After meeting with, a lot of local leaders, I think that stands the best chance of actually increasing our housing stock. I think the concern is that it won't increase it enough, but between the two, the neighborhood plan and the base, I think that the expanded plan is a better chance of actually increasing our stock of housing. And I think that in our current crisis revolving around housing, we need all the help we can get. So I would support that one.
Great. So
if I could just add, Greg.
Well, let me follow up and then I'll let you add to it. So we have a crisis. I know that you acknowledge that you experience it from the level of your experiences in the real estate world, but at some point we have to draw a line and not let individual neighbors and neighborhoods keep our state from building the housing that we need. And at some point that may require leadership from both of you or whoever's elected to say, yep, even though my neighbors don't like this particular project, I think it's really important because it's the only way to solve the crisis. Bill, why would you not want to have that position when it comes to 100 West Street?
I'm not advocating for stopping any project. I am just advocating that their voices be heard and that a project go forward. That's a great, fantastic project. I met a group of high school kids when they had their civic fair up at the town hall, the James Pugh Howard. And there's a group called YIMBY, which is yes in my backyard. And I think that is fantastic. It's just when it's yes in my backyard, let's make sure it's done correctly and with some input and not just haphazardly, because sometimes the devils are in the details.
So let me rephrase the question, Bill, and then we'll come to Josh. So how willing are you to make these unpopular decisions when it comes to building housing, knowing that sometimes people are not going to be happy with that because those of us who already have a home don't feel this nearly as painfully as those who don't?
Well, I'm no problem supporting good legislation. Like I would have definitely supported the ADU that recently got passed in the House and things of that nature. I have no problem supporting things like that. And not everyone loves the ADUs, but I think that they're another great program. And Needham had a program before the state did it as a whole. So I have no problem supporting smart housing.
Right. And Josh, how far are you going? How willing are you to make those unpopular decisions about housing?
As long as I feel I have enough information, meet with local leaders, and if I do get elected, I will have ways for community members to reach out to me and voice their opinion so I can understand the issue fully. And then once I feel like I have all the information and enough insight from the various groups, there is a point where as leaders, you have to make decisions that you feel are in the best interest of, in align with your beliefs and the communities you hope to serve. So once I get to that point, I'm happy to make decisions that I feel will ultimately benefit the communities, even if some groups find them unpopular.
Okay. So let me ask you both about a different local issue that will be before the town, but ultimately they would turn to one of you to help get the funding for it. And that is the town is exploring possible changes to Great Plain Ave. And it could include things like narrowing it down to one lane in every direction or eliminating parking to build parklets and various things. I would love to understand your thoughts about what you would find supportable on Great Plain Ave. And Josh, I'll start with you.
So I think with this, Greg, I would actually have to do a little more research, talk to the people who would be affected, talk to the local leaders specifically about the Great Plain project, just so I understood and can make a good decision that I feel is in line with the people I hope to represent.
Okay, and Bill?
I've seen some of the plans and some of them look good, but again, the devil's in the details because, they put in bike lanes, which they're looking to put in bike lanes right in front of my office here, and cut down the lanes to one. How is that going to affect traffic? And the merchants, are they going to be nervous about the
I'm
parking?
listening to something.
Well, I think,
Go ahead, Bill, sorry.
I think, you have to make sure that there is still parking. And the most important thing, I think, for vibrant downtown is the walkability. Because if people can walk, they're gonna walk to stores, they're gonna walk to the great restaurants we have. So the walkability has to be, the bike lanes are great, but I think a bigger piece of this, if someone parks somewhere, the walkability to walk around downtown and be able to walk to different shops, stores, restaurants that are great here in downtown Needham.
So the one thing you do get as a lawmaker is at least some money in terms of local earmarks to direct it. Josh, do you have any idea where you would want to kind of direct money towards in our communities?
I think, the main thing is, taking some of these big bills that have passed, whether the AHA or the MBTA Communities Act, and, making sure that some of the money's being, spent well, right? To actually develop properties, like I've heard time and again, just because the zoning passes doesn't mean the properties actually get built. So I think I'd like to see some of the results of these big bills. A $5 billion bond bill is significant. I'm curious to see how it will affect the state, the changes to the ADU laws. It's going to affect us. I'd like to see how. And then I think after giving that a little time to digest, talking to some of the local leaders, the community members, let's see next steps and how we, route either the current money available or push for new ideas and new funding.
And what about you, Bill? Any idea about particular capital projects to help?
Well, just back to the MBTA Communities Act 1 second. I agree with Josh. I just don't think that no matter what we do, we're not going to get a lot of housing. So we still have to continue on that path. I was in town meeting in 2014. We rezoned down Chestnut Street and we have not seen a lot of development there. So I wish to be more, but we shall see. But just one idea I had is, there's been a lot about the climate and climate change, and we recently passed some things at town meeting about banning some plastics and energy scores and things like that. One idea I have was to see if we could get some funding to get the solar parking at Newman School. The Newman School is a beautiful flat parking lot. It would be a fantastic place. I've seen them in Newton. I was in, who did the football team play last week? Lincoln Sudbury. I was Lincoln Sudbury for that football game, and they have them there. I know Newton has them, and I think it would be a great place to have them at Newman, and to get some funding to be able to do that, I think would be a great thing.
Okay. And let me go back to housing there. Did you have any specific ideas of other ways to grow housing supply beyond what's already on the table or been approved?
Not housing supply, but one idea I had was, maybe we could do, to get affordable housing, maybe we can have some tax incentives for landlords. So if they have more reasonable rents, they might get some tax incentives. So it's not necessarily new, but it may be some existing that we maybe get to a more affordable level by giving tax incentives to some landlords to, have more reasonable rents.
Okay, and Josh Tarsky, any ideas about enhancing our housing supply or affordability?
No, I think, like I said, Greg, I think there's been a lot put on the table recently. It'd be good to see how it plays out. And then next steps as we go forward, seeing what they should be.
Great. Let me ask you about two of the ballot questions. There's 5 ballot questions. There's 2 that the chamber has been paying particular attention to. There's the question about eliminating MCAS as a graduation requirement, and then the tipped wage one. And I want to start, actually, I'll start with you, Josh, and ask you about the tipped wage, which would increase the minimum wage that waiters, bartenders, manicurists, and some others make to $15 an hour over 5 years. And also allowed the tips to be shared in a way that they're not shared now. What is your thought? How do you feel about the tip wage question?
So I would support this. I think that there was this carve out for the minimum wage that affected this select group. For waiters, waitresses, people like that, they just don't have some of the protections of making a minimum amount despite their work. I think this would take away that cutout and make them even with the rest of the economic forces that every worker is entitled to, namely the minimum wage.
So, and can I just stop you there for like,
Sure.
the way the law is currently, if you're not making, if it's say a snowy day and you're a waiter and no customers come in, the restaurant will pay you the difference. So you are making the full minimum wage, the standard minimum wage on a day when if you didn't make it already in tips. Does that change your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it would actually, if they are, so if they are given, I just want to make sure they're making $15 an hour,
Right,
okay?
so you get, so 630 is the rate. If you don't make the average of $15 per hour, the restaurateur does pay the difference.
So that they're always insured $15.
You're always insured to getting at least the minimum wage. And typically waiters and waitresses get much more than the minimum wage because tips can be lucrative, especially in our communities.
I mean, it gets them to minimum wage. I think that this just takes away some of maybe that gray space and says that you're entitled to 15 an hour period plus, plus tips. Plus it kind of, it gets to the heart of like, I feel like our tipping conventions have changed actually since post-pandemic. It's not always clear to me nowadays when we tip and when we don't. I feel like I'm getting asked for tips more and more. And I think America has a system of tipping that's actually maybe unique in the world. I haven't done like a huge study globally, but it sure seems like we've got this weird system that I think if we get away from it and just pay people the 15 an hour minimum, then it helps bring some clarity and puts them in line with the rest of the workforce.
Okay, Bill Dermody, what do you think?
I would say no to that question. And I recently spoke to some operators, not a few in Needham, but recently I was at down in Garen's, Shauna Garen, who was a former chair of this board. And, she feels very strongly opposed to this. And I understand the reasons because it's, like you said, they're going to be covered to that no matter what. And some of the waiters and waitresses make much more than that. So they would not want that because they can get higher than that and it would confuse people. So I would vote no on that. And I know there's many restaurateurs who I talk to who are not in favor of this. I had a daughter who worked at the James and she's not there anymore, but I think she would be against this as well because she made some pretty good tips when she was working there. So I think in the end, I would vote no on that.
Hey, Greg, just to be clear, if they make the 15 or minimum wage, they can still get tips. I mean, this doesn't say they're prohibited from it. It just locks in their minimum salary with the rest of the workforce.
Right, they continue to be eligible for tips and many waiters and waitresses make well above the minimum wage.
I think the customers might then adjust the amount of tips they give to the waiters and waitresses in accordance with this. I think that might be an effect of this passage.
Restaurant owners will tell you that they think they will have to raise prices in order to compensate the additional costs. So
that's it exactly, and they still, because if you see that, oh, they're making a higher amount, maybe they won't tip them as much, and then to pay some of the rest, the customer is going to end up paying.
Great. So now, Bill, let me ask you about MCAS. And this ballot question, to be clear to everyone, is it removes the requirement that you need to pass the MCAS test in 10th grade in English, math, and science. Yes vote would eliminate this standard, and there is no standard that's being replaced by it. It would just be up to the individual school systems. How do you feel about this one, Bill?
So it's kind of a confusing one because you're actually saying no to keep it. So it's one of those confusing questions, but I would want to continue I would vote no because I want to continue the MCAS. The recent report on the Globe was very disturbing about how, the MCAS scores are down and we need to work on education to make sure that we continue to raise those. But this is the system we currently have. 2 out of the superintendents I spoke to, both were against this question. They don't think we should get rid of the MCAS. Not only is it a graduation requirement, but they also use it when they are placing people into certain programs within the schools. So I'm not saying it's the best we have right now, but it is what we have right now. And until we have something better to replace it, I would keep the MCAS. So I am going to vote no on this ballot question, which actually does keep the MCAS.
Okay, and Josh, is a school principal, help us understand where you're at on this.
So I think the MCAS does a lot of things for schools and society, to be honest. I think it establishes a floor of competency for our graduates. which is important, right? The workforce or the employers can take comfort that a graduate with a high school degree has this bare minimum standard of knowledge in science, math, and English. Okay, and I think that's important. It also allows us to compare data across districts, which allows us to see, how schools are performing, and that allows us to target support from the state. I also find that it vertically aligns our curriculum. It gives us standards to teach to and ways of communicating and holding students accountable. And I think if you take away the graduation requirement, I think the test is not as effective. Like, students who know that this is something they need to graduate take it a lot more serious. The data becomes a lot more accurate and important. And I think that's a big reason to keep it. I do agree we need to do some tweaks. As a principal of a 6 through 12, I am spending a lot of time, getting kids prepared and administering these series of exams. I do think there's a better way to do it. I would make sure our ducks in a row, our ducks are in a row before we actually do it. But I do think the MCAS as a graduation requirement is a smart thing. We are #1 in the nation in education, and if you rank us against the world, we're also very high ranking. And I'm not saying MCAS is the main reason for that, but I do think it has a piece.
Great, thank you. All right, let's try something completely different. You step into an elevator, Bill Dermody, I'll start with you, and it's you and Donald Trump. What would you say to him?
Wow, that's a good one, Craig. I would say my wife is not very fond of you, so it's probably better you're with me than her. But I
Does
would
that
say,
mean that you're fond of him?
no, I'm not. I'm not fond of him, but I think you should respect. If someone's going to do something, then you should respect him. I'm voting for Kamala Harris because I believe in her democratic values. But I don't think I would have many words for him. Actually, I would just ride the elevator with him and get off, because my mother always said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Okay, and what about you, Josh Tarsky?
As far as what I would say to him,
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I would be, look, I obviously I'm a Democrat, and I think the character matters. I think the political discourse in this country is not where it needs to be. There's too much extremism. There's too much disagreement in ways that aren't productive. And I think that, former President Trump has a lot to do with that. I think that you need leaders to be role models, and exemplify good behavior. And I don't think his record shows that. And I think, especially as a building-based principal, when I was a classroom teacher, I saw its effect on our youth. And I think some of the things that he said to our military veterans is also things that I can't get behind, whether it's disparaging John McCain, who I always thought was an American hero, and some of the other things that he said to Gold Star families. It's hard to get behind that kind of rhetoric. And I certainly don't. Whether I would say that to him or not, that's a different story. But that's how I feel about the former president.
very good. Thank you. All right. So Needham has a couple of good stories about having attracted major employers to the region. We think of TripAdvisor, which got a tax incentive program, NBC 10, which also got a tax deal. Shark Ninja has come here. We haven't seen a major employer come in since then, although Children's Hospital is building now. What would you do? What could you do from Beacon Hill to help attract employers to this area? We'll start with you, Josh.
Well, I think the housing and the MBTA Communities Act, if it plays out, I think it's going to supply us with some additional option, hopefully some additional workers. I think if we can get some interning things going on at the high school to prepare some of our local students to work in some of these industries, so that we have a pool of people who are available and willing, both while they're in high school and then when they graduate. I think that these are things that businesses are looking for. We have colleges both, in our area and regionally that I think are a big attractor. And I think that these things are some of our strengths. We've got high skilled, highly educated people that, if I was a business and I was looking into like life sciences or things that required these types of workers, this would be an area I looked into to start a business, right?
Okay, Bill, what are your thoughts about attracting businesses to?
So I was happy to be a part of town meeting and vote that TIF that we gave to TripAdvisor, who was the first one who came down there and started the revitalization of that area.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we've seen in the economy the last few years that there's not been a lot going on. Hopefully the economy, as we see by interest rates being dropped, the economy is improving and some things will happen. So I would continue to look at TIFs to attract businesses down there. The other thing though, we have to have better roads, better commuting. It got very hard for someone to come to Needham if they're going to get on 128 and take them an hour to drive here. How can we improve that? Do we go to more, carpooling? Do we have electric buses that can come from one spot to another so we can get better transportation? Because the transportation system is a mess right now. And I don't know that I have all the answers, but I like the new MBTA gentleman, Phil Eng, because I think he has some ideas about how to fix it, but we need to make sure our roads, commuting used to be, half an hour for me. And sometimes now it could be an hour and a half. I just talked to a gentleman who lived in Dover. He got a new job in the South Shore. It took him 90 minutes to get there. He said, I can't do this. He thought it was a great job, but he just couldn't do it because of that commute. So how do we get the roads better? What do we do? Do we put tolls on? I'm not sure what the answer is, but I know it's something we have to look at.
Hey, Greg,
Josh, what do you think
I
about-
agree with that too. I think you need to modernize the MBTA, electrify it, and also get more bus routes. And I think also if you want to draw in workers from the western part of the state, I would extend out that rail if possible. I mean, that's a major lift to do something like that. But we're currently the last stop. If you expanded us out to Worcester, I think that would also be ways to bring in workers and also bring in talent from a little bit at a distance and stuff like that.
So we know there was a big fight to get the Muzzy parcel redeveloped, and now we're just waiting for the market to turn around for demand for office space and everything.
I mean, that's just the economy. Unfortunately, I know the timing did not work out on that. I was part of that town meeting as well with that rezoning, but that was just, I think we had it outside actually Memorial Park because of the COVID, but that you just hope something gets placed in there.
So, and I would just say that that's partly a victim of when you take too long to rezone something or decide something, or if you're on Beacon Hill and you take too long to pass an economic development bill or a climate bill, there's real consequences to that.
There are definitely.
Yeah. All right. So I think I started with Bill on the Donald Trump question, so I'll start with you on this one, Josh. What annoys you about other people that you sometimes do yourself?
I guess hypocrisy. Like, I don't think anything bothers me more than that. I think the more you get to know me, you'll see I'm pretty straightforward and I try to be transparent. I think that I'm authentic, and I think when people aren't acting like that, it's I guess dishonesty is up there, right? I like people who are true to their word and say what they believe. And even if what they say is unpopular, they say it, and you can work with stuff like that. And that's the kind of person I try to be, someone who you can ask a question. I'll try to give you an honest response and a transparent response and give you an authentic answer. And I love working with people like that do the same. So those people who don't act like that, I guess that, it's not ideal, and I would prefer to work with people who where you stand honestly, right? And I can already see like the question, well, you get to Beacon Hill, you might be working with a bunch of folks like that, right? I'm used to working with folks like that. The question was just whether it irks me or not, and the answer is yes. And I'm not naive to human behaviors, so I take that into account when I do interact with folks, and try to be a model for like, here's a person who is authentic and genuine and tries to, do what they say and says what they mean.
Okay, Bill, what annoys you about other people that you sometimes do yourself?
So it's very interesting to ask this question because we just had a training through our company yesterday looking at self-awareness. And I actually scored pretty well with my self-awareness. And I think over time I've become much better. I used to get frustrated over people who, said they were gonna do things and then they didn't get it done. And I really, and I look back and I go, wow, wait, sometimes I said I'd do this and I didn't, but I think I'm much better at this as I've matured in my life and in my career. But I really feel what annoys me, if you're gonna say something, do something, do what you're gonna say.
Okay. All right, let's go to the question I told you both of you I would ask you at the end of this, which is if you could time travel to any one day in world history, just to observe, not to change anything, which day would you choose? And I think Bill, it's your turn, but to go first.
My turn first?
Yeah.
It was a great question. I'm glad you gave me a few days in advance to think it over. I think Max came up with it, so thank you, Max. And I know you had a question similar to this when you did that debate for the Democratic primary. I was ready with that answer for that one, but I'm ready for this one now. And I think what I would have done a day, I would have gone back into time. And I hope I'll practice saying this a few times and I get a little emotional, so I'll try not to get emotional. But it's the VJ Day, the end of World War II, because there was such, what the country went through there, such strife, such struggle. And then it was that day was such a victorious day, and everyone, in New York was celebrating, and the ticker tape parades and everybody kissing everyone. And it was such a celebration day. And the best thing about that day was it led to such great programs like the WPA, where programs for veterans. It helped get the homes in Needham built, and Needham became the community it did because of the veterans from World War II. All these homes that were built in the 40s and 50s, they all got built because of the end of the war, and we came together in such a great, it was the greatest nation. That's what they said, the greatest generation, right? And so I would have loved to see that, but I wouldn't want to be in New York. And this is where I get emotional. I would want to be with my grandparents to see it through their eyes.
Very good. Josh Tarsky, same question.
So I also debated this, and I don't know if I have a single day. I would pick one of the Constitutional Convention days. I think, especially with the way my life's path, if I'm elected, is heading, it would be really awesome to see some of the masters of policy, the way that they crafted the Constitution. As someone who's, an attorney and has helped, commanders understand laws and regulations and crafting school policies to help schools run more efficiently. I'm just amazed that the Constitution, after hundreds of years, is still as effective as it is and as flexible and enduring, especially with the current stresses put on it. I would love to hear their conversations, their considerations, because ultimately the job we're signing up for here, whoever wins, is to craft and support and advocate for good laws, good policies. And I think that the American founders were maybe the best in history. So I think that would be awesome to see them work. I know I can't ask them questions, but hearing their conversations and concerns, I think would provide a lot of insight into good governance.
Very good. Well, both really terrific answers. No wrong answers this one. And in fact, I think we have enough time to squeeze in just a follow-up that I didn't warn you about. But so tell us about one day in your life that shaped your decision to get into public service. And we'll start with you, Josh. And we need to keep these answers relatively brief.
Sure, there's been a bunch. I think watching the Twin Towers. I think watching the Twin Towers fall when I was, a student at Yale was a very decisive moment for me. That sort of brought me into public service. Also, when my childhood best friend committed or took his own life, that was a big deal. That obviously proved transformative and led me into a life of public service. And then the Twin Towers falling just directed me into the military. So I think that those experiences have, showed me the causes that you stand by, that you put your life's effort into, actually define you. And I think I learned that from my childhood best friend's, suicide. And also when the Twin Towers fell, there was a question that was just in my head, why not me? And I couldn't shake that. And it led me to a life of service that eventually showed me, in Afghanistan, that good laws and good education systems, which are the hallmarks of thriving societies, shouldn't be taken for granted. And that there's no higher calling than educating youth, and to try and do right by society by helping generations, fulfill their potential.
Thank you. Bill Dermody, same question. One day in your life that helped shape your desire to get into public service.
Probably actually going back to my grandparents. My grandfather was very active in the church here in Needham, and we were, I believe, collecting coats. And I'm like, why are we doing this? What is the purpose? Why are we doing this? And he said, because we have a very good life, and we need to give back to the people that aren't as fortunate as us. And that has led me down unbelievable paths as I've grown through my life here in Needham and the things that I've been involved in. I really believe in giving back to the community.
Great. Thank you both very much. All right, we're going to go with concluding comments. You have 90 seconds to wrap it up. I will start to wave my hand when you run out of time, and we'll start with you, Josh Tarsky.
Yeah. So, we've talked a lot about the challenges that, we face as a district. And there are many, and there's always going to be challenges that we face. And I can't promise you a policy solution for all the issues, but I can promise you a practical, pragmatic way of listening to, finding information, and making sure that I understand the solution, maybe not the solution, but the factors in play before making a decision. As a veteran, a teacher, and an attorney, I've dedicated my life to public service. And I firmly believe that in being of service to others, we can make our country and world a safer and more sustainable place. So I think that's what we all want. We want a society where our leaders are responsive and where they understand the issues and our concerns and they advocate for us. And I think with a race like the state rep race, which is the one we're engaged in, it is a locally based thing where a lot of people, you get to know a lot of people, and try to make a difference at the local level. But I do think the experiences I've had leading, soldiers, leading classrooms, and leading schools, and as a parent who has kids in this community, I think those experiences will be valuable. And I think if elected, that would be, I think I can benefit the people in Dover, Medfield, and of course, Needham.
Great, thank you. Bill Dermody, your turn. Hold on one second. Let's see. Go ahead, Bill.
We good?
Actually, one second. Give me 1 second. Someone's at my front door. Go ahead, Bill. 90 seconds.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for my fellow members of the chamber for this opportunity this afternoon. As I said earlier, I consider myself a communitarian. I am present and have been present in the district since I was elected to town meeting when I was 20 years old. I have been elected townwide as a Park and Recreation Commissioner and a Memorial Park trustee. I have been involved in numerous boards, committees, and local nonprofits. To name a few, the Needham 300, the Public Safety Building, the Greensfield Playground, the Needham Exchange Cup. When Alley Raceman had the parade in town, we were involved with that as well. I also have been involved in the Own Your Peace project, which is outside the front of the high school here. And I delivering traveling meals because I feel like everybody deserves a warm meal every day. I've also coached over 100 youth sports teams for my 4 children that my wife and I raised here in Needham. I am connected to this community. The role of the legislator in the connection between the town and the state. And you want somebody who knows the town, knows the people, and already has those relationships in place. And I am proud to be endorsed by the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, the Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Animal Lovers, and most recently, I am pleased to be announced that I have received Denise Garlick's endorsement. So for all of those reasons and more, I respectfully ask for your vote on November 5th.
Thank you both.
Greg, real quick, I feel like some of the endorsements I've received are important too, including Senator Warren. Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, Congressman Auchincloss, Congressman Moulton, Senator Becca Rausch, State Auditor Diana DiZoglio, Vote Vets, DEFR, New Politics, and Lyda Hawk.
I'm gonna stop you there, but you made your
Yeah,
point.
I wanted to put that out there too.
I want to thank you both for your time. I don't envy voters in this contest because you've got two really good decisions, and I think we had a great conversation today. And we should all be grateful to both of you for being willing to serve, given the circumstances, given the time. And I appreciate your time today, and urge everyone to think about it carefully and make a great vote on November 5th or early voting as well. Thank you both very much.
Thanks,
Greg.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Rossi,
Bill.
for
Thank
sponsoring
you.
our series here. Good night, everybody.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.